Okay, we're back to multiplication and division. So remember when we multiplied our whole numbers together. That gave me the 6. We multiplied our imaginary numbers together. I times I was I squared. And remember, we had to remember that I squared was a -1. We did a substitution and then multiplied and got a -6. So we're going to do some of those again. So F, square root of a -4 times the square root of a -5. So this would be -1 and 4 times a -1 and 25. So the square root of a -1 is I. Square root of 4 is 2. So this is really 2I. Square root of a -1 is I. Square root of 25 is 5. And I just kind of rearranged my numbers. That's all I did. Now we're going to multiply our whole numbers, multiply our imaginary numbers, but don't forget you can't have an I squared. I squared is a -1, and my final answer is a -10. Okay, let's go on down and find some more like this. So number 3. Now that one's already broken down. So we're just going to do our whole numbers. We're going to do our imaginary numbers. We have an I squared, so we have to substitute a -1, and I get a -15. Okay. Number 4. The square root of -7. I have the, square root of 7 is square root of 7. I'm going to leave it alone just for a second. Square root of a -7. So that is a -1 and 7. We know the -1, this piece of it, is I. And what we have left here is the square root of 7 times the square root of 7. And guys, if you think about that, we could rewrite that as the square root of 7 times 7, and so that is 7, because I've got 2 7s together. So this is 7I. Do you see what I did there? Anytime, the other thing to remember is anytime you have 2 things under the square root that are exactly the same, it's always that whole number. So in other words, what I mean by that, if I had the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, it would equal 3, the whole number. Okay. Let's try another one. Again, I'm going to break this apart. So this is the square root of a -1, square root of 3. Over here, I've got the square root of a -1 and square root of 6. The square root of -1 is I, square root of 3. I, square root of 6. Now again, I'm going to take my i's and put them together. So that's I squared. Now, just like what I did over here, I can now take 3 and 6 and put together. Okay, I'm not making writing too big here. So I'm going to leave that I squared for right now. But this is the square root of 18, if you want to do it that way. And then the square root of 18 will simplify. So I'm going to come on up here. So the square root of 18 would be 9 and 2. Which is 3 square root 2. We know that I squared is a -1, so this would be a -3 square root 2. Final answer. Now, some of you might say, well, why didn't you just simplify here? And I definitely could have done that, and I could do that for you if you needed me to, but I don't want to confuse anybody, so hopefully that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to stop right there, and you're going to practice again some of those.